The Zygorian Collective, a species known throughout the galaxy for their ruthless efficiency in war, had built their empire through countless successful conquests. Their history was marked by a relentless pursuit of power, with each new campaign adding more worlds and resources to their ever-expanding dominion. The Zygorians prided themselves on their strict adherence to traditional military tactics, honed over centuries to perfection. Their warriors were highly disciplined, their strategies meticulously planned, and their technology far superior to that of most other species. In every conflict, they followed the same blueprint, a swift, calculated strike designed to overwhelm their enemies before they could mount any significant resistance. Their reputation was one of near invincibility, and their mere presence in a star system often led to immediate surrender from those who knew of their methods. When the Zygorians set their sights on Earth, they viewed humanity as just another primitive species to be subjugated with minimal effort. To the Zygorians, humans appeared disorganized and technologically backward, relying on outdated methods of warfare that were no match for the Collective's advanced weaponry and strategic prowess. The Zygorian leaders anticipated a swift and decisive victory, expecting the humans to fold quickly under the pressure of their initial assault. They saw Earth as an easy target, ripe for conquest and assimilation into their empire. Confident in their superiority, the Zygorians made little effort to study humanity's history of conflict, assuming that their usual tactics would suffice to crush any resistance the humans might offer. The invasion began with the standard Zygorian attack pattern. A massive fleet of warships descended upon Earth, initiating a bombardment designed to cripple human defenses and create widespread panic. The Zygorian commanders watched with satisfaction as their ships breached the planet's atmosphere, confident that their display of overwhelming force would lead to an immediate surrender. Ground forces were deployed in key locations, targeting major cities and military installations with precision strikes. Everything proceeded according to plan in the early stages, with little to no resistance from the humans. It seemed to the Zygorians that their expectations of an easy victory were being met, and they prepared to deliver the final blow that would bring Earth under their control. However, as the invasion progressed, the Zygorians began to encounter something unexpected. Instead of the orderly surrender they had anticipated, they were met with chaos. Human forces responded in ways that defied the Zygorians' understanding of warfare. Rather than retreating or capitulating, human soldiers employed tactics that seemed illogical and reckless. They attacked from unexpected angles, used unorthodox methods, and engaged in hit-and-run strategies that threw the Zygorian forces into disarray. The rigid, highly coordinated Zygorian military found itself struggling to adapt to a battlefield that made no sense to them. Every time they thought they had a human strategy figured out, the humans would do something entirely unpredictable, forcing the Zygorians to constantly reassess their approach. The initial confidence of the Zygorian commanders began to waver as they realized that what they had dismissed as incompetence was, in fact, humanity's greatest strength. Humanity's defense against the Zygorian invasion was anything but conventional. Rather than meeting the invaders head-on in organized formations, human forces adopted a series of unpredictable and unorthodox tactics that left the Zygorians bewildered. Small, mobile units struck at random, avoiding direct confrontations and instead focusing on sabotage, guerrilla warfare, and psychological operations. Ambushes were common, with human soldiers using the terrain to their advantage, launching hit-and-run attacks that disrupted Zygorian supply lines and communication networks. These tactics, though chaotic and seemingly disorganized, were highly effective in creating confusion and panic among the invaders. The Zygorians, accustomed to fighting disciplined armies that adhered to the same rigid principles as themselves, found it nearly impossible to predict or counter these unpredictable maneuvers. The stark contrast between the Zygorians' rigid approach to warfare and humanity's adaptability became increasingly apparent as the conflict dragged on. The Zygorians relied on a strict adherence to their tried-and-true methods, expecting that their superior technology and organizational skills would eventually bring the humans to heel. However, this inflexibility became a liability when faced with an opponent that refused to fight by the rules. Human forces quickly adapted to changing circumstances, modifying their strategies as needed and exploiting every weakness in the Zygorian approach. While the Zygorians were bogged down by their reliance on procedure, humans thrived in the chaos, using their creativity and resourcefulness to turn the tide of battle in their favor. The Zygorians' inability to adapt to this fluid battlefield exposed the limitations of their traditional strategies and left them vulnerable to defeat. As the Zygorians struggled to maintain control, their leaders made several key mistakes in their attempts to apply standard military tactics against the humans. They underestimated the resilience of human forces, committing their troops to frontal assaults that were easily outmaneuvered. The Zygorians also failed to recognize the importance of securing local support, assuming that the population would either submit or be irrelevant to their campaign. This miscalculation allowed human resistance to flourish, with civilians providing critical intelligence and support to the military effort. Additionally, the Zygorians' reliance on centralized command structures slowed their response time, making it difficult for them to react effectively to the fast-paced and decentralized nature of human operations. These errors compounded the challenges they faced and contributed to their growing difficulties in the conflict. Frustration among the Zygorian leadership grew as the war progressed. What they had expected to be a quick and decisive conquest had turned into a protracted and costly struggle. Every strategy they employed seemed to falter in the face of human ingenuity and unpredictability. Their advanced technology, which had always been their greatest asset, was rendered ineffective by tactics that they could neither predict nor understand. The Zygorian commanders, once confident in their superiority, began to question their assumptions and their ability to achieve victory. The longer the conflict continued, the more their frustration turned to desperation, as they grappled with the reality that they were losing a war to a species they had vastly underestimated. The mounting pressure humanity's resilience became the defining factor in the conflict, as they refused to succumb to the overwhelming force of the Zygorian invasion. Despite the initial shock and devastation, human determination only grew stronger. The more the Zygorians pressed, the more fiercely humanity resisted. Every setback was met with renewed effort, and every loss was turned into a lesson, quickly absorbed and applied in the ongoing defense. Communities rallied, and the spirit of resistance spread across the globe, uniting people from all walks of life in the fight against the invaders. This resilience, born out of countless struggles throughout human history, began to shift the momentum of the conflict. The Zygorians, who had expected a swift and easy conquest, found themselves facing an enemy that simply refused to be defeated. Human forces leveraged their resilience with unconventional warfare that further confounded the Zygorians. Guerrilla tactics became the norm, with small, mobile units striking at the invaders and then disappearing before a counterattack could be mounted. In one instance, a group of civilians used makeshift traps and decoys to mislead and ambush a highly trained Zygorian squad, turning what should have been a routine operation into a costly defeat for the invaders. Another example involved the use of cyber warfare, where human hackers infiltrated Zygorian communication networks, spreading misinformation that caused confusion and disarray among the alien ranks. These unconventional methods, while seemingly chaotic, were highly effective in undermining the Zygorian war machine. They disrupted supply lines, sowed discord among the troops, and gradually eroded the invaders' ability to maintain control over the areas they had occupied. As these unorthodox strategies continued to succeed, the Zygorians began to show signs of desperation. Their traditional methods, which had brought them victory in countless other campaigns, were failing in the face of an enemy that did not play by their rules. The invaders started to panic as they realized they were losing control of the situation. Their once coordinated efforts became increasingly erratic as they tried and failed to adapt to the rapidly changing conditions on the ground. In a desperate bid to regain the upper hand, the Zygorian leadership ordered more aggressive tactics, including indiscriminate bombardments and scorched earth policies. However, these actions only deepened the chaos, further alienating them from the human population and making their defeat more inevitable. With the Zygorians on the back foot, the tide of the invasion began to turn decisively in humanity's favor. The invaders, now outmaneuvered at every turn, found themselves unable to maintain their foothold on Earth. Their losses mounted as human forces, growing more confident with each victory, began to take the offensive. The once feared Zygorian army, now fragmented and demoralized, struggled to regroup in the face of relentless human attacks. As the humans pressed their advantage, it became clear that the Zygorians were no longer in control of the war. The stage was set for a final push that would see the invaders driven from the planet, marking the beginning of the end for their ill-fated campaign against a species they had grossly underestimated. The realization that victory was out of reach struck the Zygorians like a hammer blow. After weeks of relentless pressure, they found themselves unable to maintain their grip on the territories they had so confidently invaded. Their advanced technology and meticulously planned strategies had failed to secure the decisive victory they had expected. The unyielding resistance and the sheer unpredictability of human tactics had worn down their forces, breaking their morale and shattering their confidence. Commanders who once believed in their invincibility now faced the stark reality that their invasion had turned into a catastrophic failure. The turning point came when their central command, overwhelmed by reports of continuous setbacks and mounting casualties, finally accepted that further efforts would only lead to total annihilation. As the decision to retreat was made, the once organized Zygorian forces quickly descended into chaos. Orders to withdraw were issued, but the execution was anything but orderly. What had been a coordinated military machine began to unravel as panic set in. Units that had operated with clockwork precision were now scrambling to evacuate, with communication breakdowns adding to the confusion. Ships that had brought the invaders to Earth now became their lifeline, hastily lifting off from the planet's surface under heavy fire. The retreat was marked by desperation, with many Zygorian soldiers abandoning their posts in a frantic bid to escape. The disciplined ranks of the Zygorian army were now a disjointed, fleeing mass, struggling to return to the safety of space. Seeing the invaders in full retreat, humanity seized the moment and shifted from defense to offense. Human forces, emboldened by the apparent collapse of the Zygorian invasion, launched a relentless pursuit. Ground troops, resistance fighters, and even civilians took up arms to chase down the retreating aliens, turning the tables on the invaders who had once terrorized them. The skies filled with the sounds of human aircraft hunting down Zygorian ships, while on the ground, ambushes and hit-and-run attacks harried the fleeing enemy. What began as a retreat quickly turned into a rout, with Zygorian forces suffering heavy losses as they tried to escape. The humans, now with the upper hand, showed no mercy, determined to ensure that the invaders would never again pose a threat. The final stand of the Zygorian invaders came as they reached the last remaining stronghold near their evacuation point. With their backs against the wall, the Zygorians made one last, desperate attempt to hold their ground. The remnants of their once mighty army dug in, preparing to face the onslaught of human forces. The battle was fierce, but the outcome was never in doubt. Human soldiers, now fighting with the confidence of inevitable victory, overwhelmed the alien defenses. The Zygorians, exhausted and outmatched, could do little to stop the tide that was crashing down on them. In the end, their last stand crumbled under the relentless human assault, and the few survivors were forced to flee, leaving behind their dead and the wreckage of their failed invasion. The Zygorian retreat was complete, marking the end of their ill-fated campaign on Earth and sealing their defeat. The Zygorian leaders, once confident in their unchallenged superiority, now grappled with the bitter reality of their defeat. In the aftermath of the failed invasion, they gathered to analyze what had gone so catastrophically wrong. Their reflections were marked by a mix of disbelief and grudging respect for humanity. The Zygorians had relied on their tried-and-true methods, expecting that their rigid discipline and advanced technology would guarantee success. Instead, they were met with a defense that defied their understanding of warfare. Humanity's seemingly chaotic and uncoordinated response had outmaneuvered their precise tactics at every turn. The Zygorian leaders came to realize that the very qualities they had dismissed as weaknesses, human adaptability, unpredictability, and resilience, were the key factors that led to their downfall. This newfound respect for humanity was tinged with a deep concern, as they understood that their failure was not just a setback, but a sign of a significant shift in the balance of power within the galaxy. From humanity's perspective, the victory was both hard-won and eye-opening. The human leaders and military strategists took pride in their success, recognizing that their unconventional approach to warfare had been the deciding factor. The very traits that made humanity seem awful at war. In the eyes of the Zygorians, improvisation, flexibility, and a willingness to embrace chaos had proven to be their greatest strengths. This victory reinforced the belief that in the face of a more technologically advanced foe, the ability to think creatively and adapt to changing circumstances could outweigh sheer firepower and rigid strategy. Humanity's survival and eventual triumph against such a formidable enemy served as a powerful reminder of the importance of these traits in warfare. It also highlighted the value of unity and determination in the face of an existential threat, as people from all walks of life had come together to defend their world. The broader implications of the Zygorian defeat reverberated throughout the galaxy. Other species, who had watched the invasion with a mix of concern and curiosity, now re-evaluated their perceptions of humanity. The notion that humans were primitive and disorganized was quickly discarded, replaced by a new understanding of their capabilities. The Zygorians' failure served as a warning to others. Underestimating humanity could have dire consequences. This shift in perception began to alter the dynamics of interstellar relations, as potential adversaries reconsidered their strategies and alliances. The invasion and its outcome also sparked discussions about the future of warfare in the galaxy, with many species recognizing that the old ways of waging war might no longer be sufficient in an era where adaptability and unconventional thinking could determine the fate of entire civilizations. In conclusion, the Zygorian defeat on Earth served as a profound lesson in the nature of war and the dangers of underestimating an opponent. The invasion had been driven by overconfidence and a reliance on traditional tactics, but it was humanity's adaptability and resilience that ultimately prevailed. This conflict underscored the importance of being able to think beyond established norms and embrace new approaches when faced with unexpected challenges. As the galaxy absorbed the implications of this conflict, it became clear that the future of warfare would belong to those who could adapt and innovate, rather than simply rely on brute strength and rigid strategies. The Zygorians' failure was a testament to the fact that in the ever-evolving landscape of interstellar conflict, adaptability and a willingness to embrace the unpredictable could be the most powerful weapons of all.